The wind whispered low across the valley, lifting dust in soft spirals like spirits returning home. Sunset bled across the hills, laying amber light over worn earth and thorny sage. Boaz Calder sat still in his saddle, reins loose in hand, his shadow long beside the horse like a second rider. The land was quiet, too quiet, crows had gone silent, and the usual wind through grass sounded more like a hush than a song. Bo shifted in the saddle. His horse, a pale roan named Selah, danced nervously as they crested the ridge and looked down at the forgotten trail skirting the canyon edge. He spotted them there, 3 burlap sacks stained and sun-cooked, tossed like someone's discarded memory. They lay too straight for coincidence. Too still. Selah balked when they neared. One sack twitched. Bo froze. Not a rodent. Not the wind. A human shape. He slid from the saddle and moved carefully, boot heels scuffing dust that rose like old ghosts around him. The whisper was faint, shaken, scared. "Take them off, please?" The voice pierced straight through him. He hadn't heard a tone like that since. He dropped to one knee, heart thudding hard as hooves. The first sack resisted his pull. The knot was clumsy, frayed. He tugged it open, the coarse weave giving way to the pale cheek of a young woman. Her eyes were closed, lashes clumped with grit, lips cracked and bloodied. She flinched as light touched her. He opened the second sack and froze. There it was, the embroidered blue kerchief he had stitched for Clara, his wife. And below it, the lavender sachet she always kept in her bodice. Bo's breath caught, sharp as barbed wire. The third sack held only old shoes and a torn shawl, also Clara's. He staggered back as if someone had dug her from the grave and offered her piece by piece. The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open. They were the wrong color, a shade lighter than Clara's hazel, but there was a kindness in them, a flicker. Not recognition, not quite. More like apology. "I didn't steal them," she whispered hoarsely. "They gave them to me. Said she wanted me to have them." Bo's lips parted, but no words came. He stared, stunned, one hand trembling as it hovered above her dirt-streaked forehead. "Who gave them to you?" he asked finally, voice low, rough. "They said her name was Clara Bell," she rasped, "and that she saved me." The name cracked something in him, sharp and deep. Bo wrapped her gently in his duster and lifted her with a care reserved for broken things. She didn't weigh much, barely more than the sorrow he carried, but her breath was warm against his chest, and that alone reminded him she wasn't a ghost. He rode through twilight with her cradled in front of him, heart pounding with questions he wasn't yet brave enough to voice. They reached his camp by nightfall. A single fire flickered under a half-dead juniper, casting long shadows across the canvas bedrolls and coffee pot waiting beside it. He laid her near the fire and offered water, which she took in shaking sips. She didn't ask who he was. He didn't ask where she came from, not yet. When she finally slept, curled under his blanket, Bo sat beside her and watched the stars. They were bright tonight, blistering with memory. He hadn't spoken Clara's name aloud in almost 3 years. And yet this girl had arrived wearing her scent, her kerchief, her pain. By morning the girl tried to stand. She failed once, twice, then managed to sit up. Her voice came stronger, but her eyes held wariness like a tether. "Name's Bessie Lou," she said, voice cracking. "Bo Calder," he answered, nodding once. "You're safe now." She laughed, a short, hollow sound. "Ain't nobody really safe." Bo didn't argue. Over black coffee and dry biscuits he watched her closely. She moved like someone who expected to be struck. Every loud noise made her flinch. When he reached for the kettle, she ducked her head instinctively. He forced his hands to slow down, to soften. Poured her coffee with both hands, gently set it down. Noticed how she watched his hands like they might betray him. "I knew someone named Clara," he said quietly. "My wife." Bessie didn't speak. Her fingers curled around the tin cup like a shield. "She died 3 winters ago. Fever took her quick." Bessie nodded once. "She saved me." She didn't even know she did, but she did. She didn't elaborate. Bo didn't push. Later that day he saddled Selah again. "We'll head to town," he said. "Doc's there. You need rest. Real food." She nodded, but her shoulders tensed. "They'll see me. Let 'em." She looked at him then, really looked, and her eyes shimmered not with tears but disbelief. As if she couldn't remember the last time someone had stood up for her. The ride to town was long and quiet. Bo told her about the old oak where Clara used to read, about the time their mule got drunk on fermented berries and nearly rolled off a ridge. Bessie listened, even smiled once. By the time they reached the outskirts, the sun had dipped low again. The town wasn't large, Just a few crooked buildings clinging to the earth, but it buzzed with the kind of whispers that carried like wildfire. People stared. A girl, filthy and torn, riding with the widowed cowboy who hadn't spoken Clara's name in years. Bo ignored them. At the clinic, Doc Ruthers cleaned Bessie's wounds, frowning more with each bruise uncovered. Bo waited outside, hands in his pockets, boots grinding against porch dust. "You sure about this, Bo?" Doc asked as Bessie slept inside. "Bringing her here? Folks'll talk." "Let 'em," Bo said again. Ruthers eyed him, then softened. "She's been through hell." Bo nodded. "I know." That night, Bo took her to the edge of town, to the abandoned homestead Clara once dreamed of turning into a schoolhouse. It had walls and a roof, and that was more than most girls like Bessie had ever known. She stepped inside and looked around like someone expecting the walls to vanish. "It ain't much," Bo said, lighting a lamp. "It's everything," she whispered. They settled into a rhythm over the next days. Bo fixed fences and fetched supplies. Bessie swept dust from corners that hadn't seen light in years. She began humming when she worked, soft and tuneless at first, then clearer, steadier. Bo brought her new boots. She cried when she opened the box. Not because of what they were, but because no one had ever thought her worth the trouble. He taught her to tie knots, to start a fire, to saddle a horse. She moved slowly at first, but each day added something back to her posture. Less flinching. More breathing. In the evenings they'd sit outside watching the sky change. Bessie began to tell her story, piece by piece, like drawing cloth from an old wound. Sold at 15 to a rancher. Used, hurt, locked away. The man, Jed Whitaker, had called her his wife. But there was no ceremony. Only a chain and an order to stay silent. One day Clara had come through with a wagon of herbs and salves. Left a kerchief behind. Spoke to her with kindness no one had before. Later that night Bessie ran. Ran until she collapsed beside a fence, stuffed Clara's forgotten kerchief and lavender into a sack like armor. Bo sat still through the tale, rage simmering, heart breaking anew. Days passed. The town began to change its tune. A child waved at Bessie. An old woman left bread at the door. Small things. Then a rider came. A tall man with sunburnt skin and a bounty poster in hand. Silas Grady. He dismounted slow, careful. "I'm looking for a girl. Bessie Lou Whitaker." Bo stepped forward. "She ain't yours to find." Silas pulled out a folded paper. "Her husband says otherwise." Bessie stepped out of the house, eyes like wet ash. She looked at the man, then at Bo. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. "I'll go," she said softly. "But first, I have something to bury." Bo's jaw clenched. "You don't have to." "I do." At sunrise they rode to Clara's grave. Bessie knelt, placing the kerchief, the sachet, and a single braid of her own hair beside the stone. Her fingers traced Clara's name. She whispered something Bo didn't catch. "She saved me," she said aloud, rising. "And she never even knew." Bo took off his hat. "She'd have loved you, Bessie." Silas watched from the hill. He waited. But when Bessie turned, head high, eyes clear, something in him shifted. "Tell Jed she's gone," Bo said. "Tell him she died out there in the canyon. No one left to chase." Silas looked between them. Then nodded. Turned his horse. Rode off. Bo and Bessie stood in silence, the wind folding around them. On the ride back, she rested her head against him, not as someone broken but someone choosing where to lean. The trail behind them stretched golden and long. And far ahead, the sky held the kind of quiet where hope begins to hum.